who wasn't beaten far in a listed race here last.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning and welcome to the Saturday edition of Racing Across America. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Thanks also to our friends at Gulfstream for their sponsorship. Gulfstream Park. Champions start here. Let me toss out a reminder also today at the Columbia Turnpike Branch there's a Fan Appreciation Day. If you're a patron there, swing on by between noon and 5 p.m. First 50 folks through the door get a free bet voucher. Free pass performances are available. Contest, food and beverage. Should be a lot of fun. The Columbia Turnpike Branch today between noon and 5 p.m. Fan Appreciation Day. Coming up a little bit later on the show, big stakes day down at Gulfstream, and we're going to hit on that with a couple of taped interviews a little bit later on. We talked to Chad Brown, and of course he has Good Magic coming back for the seasonal debut. And also we talked with Mark Henning, who has Strike Power in the Fountain of Youth, along with Good Magic being in there. A couple of interesting performers in the Fountain of Youth. Mark Henning also has Cash in the Devona Dale. So we talked about that as well. And with Chad Brown, we talked about some of his undercard stakes runners also. So that's all coming up a little bit later in the show. But top of the show, thought it was time for another visit to catch up on the Derby Trail with our friend Jeremy Plonk, HorsePlayerNow.com, Countdown to the Crown, Night School, and more. Good morning, Jeremy.
Hey, good morning, Seth. Good to be with you on one of the really first big kickoff days of the year. You know, the comp was a good start, I thought, the Risen Star, but now we get the champion back and Good Magic, and today kind of feels like the first playoff game, if you will, of the 2018 trail, and really looking forward to seeing what we have later today in the Fountain of Youth. Of course, Free Drop Billy announced scratch this morning, and that takes a little bit of depth out of the Fountain of Youth, but certainly the headliner and the marquee, everybody wants to see what Good Magic has.
And let me go back, you've kind of alluded to it, so let me go back a couple weeks ago, because obviously Marino gets beaten and Stilled Regard gets beaten a couple of weeks back at Fairgrounds and Oaklawn, which kind of threw the early part of the Derby Trail into a little bit of a awry with this one of those situations where you're hoping they're not going to be beating up on each other, throughout the Triple Crown Trail. But I think this week and next week we get a chance to see horses like Good Magic, Bolt d'Oro, McKinsey. Can the cream rise to the top? But what were your thoughts a couple of weeks ago? Because I see, for instance, Bravazzo you put in your top 10.
Yeah, I've been a big Bravazzo fan and as allowance winner. Rank all the maiden allowance and stakes races in Countdown to the Crown. See who's going to rise up, out of those lower ranks in January and February and become a player. And Bravazzo had one of the highest rated, I thought, allowance wins of the year when he won at Oaklawn on the comeback. I like him as a 2-year-old at Keeneland. So I think he's a horse who's really moving in the right direction at the right time for Lucas. And so while I was kind of taking a wait-and-see approach with Bravazzo, because so many of those horses from the Kentucky Jockey Club haven't really fired back, his race, I thought, last out in the Risen Star was awfully good. And a good note about that is, Lucas's horses came out of those races and were right back on the work tab very quickly. Bravazzo and then Sporting Chance, who was third in the Southwest. Both of those horses came back on the work tab in quick turnarounds, which means they were, coming off layoffs or coming off a big effort, and it didn't knock them out. They were able to get right back to work, Whereas you take a horse like Catholic Boy, who, his passing race when he came back at Tampa, it's taken him a lot longer to get back to the workout tab. So that race knocked him out a little bit more than, say, the two Lucas horses. Bravazo and Sporting Chance right back on the tab, and I think that's a good sign. You know, one effort doesn't a season make, that's for sure, but it's got to be a continuous build for these horses. You don't want to see a lot of steps backwards. And, you know, for some of the horses ranked up towards the top, Good Magic, Boldoro, Salamini, these are horses who haven't had a chance to stub their toe yet, you know, and we'll see what happens today with Good Magic, first of that trio, to get a chance to perform.
All right, let's talk a little bit about, before we get to today's action, I pulled up because I was reading Countdown to the Crown, and obviously highly recommend that every time you're on. For folks who want to follow the 3-year-old trail, go to horseplayernow.com. Jeremy updates the 3-year-old scene every Friday afternoon with Countdown to the Crown, following the stakes races, previews and reviews, major allowance and maiden races. And I know every year you kind of start to parse out some of those maiden and allowance races as it gets later in the season. We're going to talk about maybe some of the under-the-radar horses in just a second. But tell me when that you start to make that delineation of it's getting too late. Because I think the horses we're going to talk about in a second are all right on the cusp and can kind of still make it. But there'll be interesting players later in the season, if not. But as I say, where do you make that delineation where you start to parse out those maiden and allowance races?
This first Saturday in March.
Yeah.
This is kind of the breaking point now. You have a horse like Exclamation Point, the kid brother at Classic Empire, who's running at Oaklawn this weekend. They're like right on the brink. A major horse like that with a lot of promise will still look at their races moving forward, but the in-depth maiden and allowance fields at this point, January and February, really where I hone in on them. So we're going to turn the corner after this week and focus just on stakes horses and just the really elite allowance type horses. A maiden at this point is going to be in, you know, really, really bad shape. But an allowance horse, you know, if you come off a nice allowance win now and then you go to one of the April prep, nothing wrong with that. You can still make that parlay of a nice 2 more races before the Derby.
As I say, you included some of those maiden and allowance races in the latest Countdown to the Crown. So there were some recent horses that may be under people's radar a little bit, but I wanted to talk about them before we talk about the big races today and just get some thoughts going forward with horses. Again, just want to give people a heads up so they can keep their eyes on some of these horses. First up, want to go back to February 25th. An optional claimer, non-winners of one other than down at the fairgrounds. This was a 6-furlong trip. And we're going to look at Curlin's Honor. Second-time starter for Mark Casse, won the debut. Curlin's Honor is going to be the number 6 horse in here. Chart says lacked room at the 8th altered course. He's going to win by a neck. And you mentioned in your column that, you know, at 2-5, he doesn't necessarily win by a margin that a 2-5 shot did. But given the trip, it was a pretty good performance for Curlin's Honor.
It was, and 6 furlongs is not going to be his best distance going forward. You know, the son of Curlin's probably going to get better as farther they go. You get an education. You know, sometimes if you just lambast the field, you don't get as much out of it sometimes as if you get a little education out of the process. And so for a good horse to develop along the trail, you want to see a little bit of, you know, can they overcome some adversity? Can they still win when things aren't going exactly right for them? And that was the case for Curlin's Honor, who was able to alter course, get to the outside, and then really finish nicely. This horse will be a good 2-turn runner. You know, there was a good mud pedigree there, so did this win get flattered a little bit by the mud? We'll see. But I think Curlin's Honor, yet another one to watch for trainer Mark Casse. He really loved the gallop out there. This horse was running, you know, as strong after the wire is coming to it. And I think Curlin's Honor is one to watch. You know, Casse's got so many horses on this allowance-level victory or minor stakes victories that are ready to move up into the upper echelon. You wonder how he's going to separate them and where they're all going to go. I think a horse like this would play really well in the Lexington at Keeneland. You're fast enough to win a sprint, and that mile and the 16th race at Keeneland ends at the 16th pole finish line. It has a short run into the first turn. Tactical speed is usually really good there. So a horse who can win going 6 furlongs is usually a good stretch-out candidate at Keeneland. I'd love to see Curlin's Honor try the Lexington there the second Saturday of the week.
And as you say, ran into trouble and the sloppy track. So he had a couple of things that might have been working against him and overcame both of those. So that's always something you look for when they can overcome the trouble as the big favorite. That goes in their favor, regardless of what the chart margin of victory is. All right, let's move on to February 24th, a little bit earlier. That was down at Gulfstream Park in a maiden special event going 7 furlongs. Wanted to pull up the win by penalty. Bill Mott can have him ready first time out, but it's not a specialty of his. But certainly penalty in the career debut looked pretty good. Won at 13-1. Penalty's going to be the number 9 horse in here under Irad Ortiz. We're seeing this horse come up on the outside. Really a nice late run and it's kind of pulling away at the end. Nice field of 11 in here and gets it done at the 7 furlong trip, which again, kind of a difficult spot, difficult distance to debut at. So it was a good-looking debut win for penalty and Bill Mott.
Yeah, I agree. 7 furlongs, one of the toughest trips in racing, especially for a first-time starter. Mott doesn't get him ready right out of the box often, and so penalty winning on debut, I think, is a very good feather in his cap. And this is a horse whose pedigree may not be a classic distance pedigree on the bottom side, but it's a really good Oaklawn pedigree, and that's something I mentioned. All the kin on the damn side of this pedigree, prom shoes, wildcat shoes, if you remember all those horses for Jenks Byers over the last decade or so, they've all been top stakes horses at Oaklawn, going 6 furlongs, a mile and 16 max. But I think Penalty's a really interesting horse that, Bill's not going to throw him into, say, the Wood Memorial probably off the maiden wing. But he could go to Arkansas for something like the Instant Racing Stakes is on the undercard of the Arkansas Derby, and then you see some of those horses become pretty good summer 3-year-olds. Don't be surprised if this horse shows up at Oaklawn. I mean, he would be a really nice fit there. And again, probably not an Arkansas Derby horse, but if he can win that 3-year-old stakes on the Arkansas Derby undercard, that sets him up for a nice summer. Maybe he's a Jim Dandy, Travers kind of horse by the time we hit summer. There is some interest there with Penalty.
Yeah, and I'm just looking here. It's interesting. They paid just under $400,000. So obviously by Blame, they had high hopes. He lives up to them in the first start. But he's not Triple Crown nominated, and it is Bill Mott, so they probably are looking to be patient with this horse. And so maybe one of those 3-year-olds to watch going into the summertime.
Yeah, exactly. And how do you get from here to there? That's the whole thing. And, some of those other races thin out pretty good as you get close to the Derby because all the main horses are, resting up for the Derby. Some other horses have kind of decided, well, we're not that kind of quality yet, so we're going to regroup and wait for June. You can kind of catch some pretty easy spots in April and May just under the cusp. Some of those races don't come up that salty. Undercard on the Belmont Stakes Day, races like the Easy Goer and things like that over the last couple of years would be a nice spot for a horse like this on development.
All right, let's move on to one more kind of, as I say, under the radar, unless folks watch this race. It was the third race on February 25th at Aqueduct. Maiden specials going a mile. This was a field of 6. And admittedly, as you look down, Westerdale laid over this field, went off as the 3-5 favorite. This was the third career start for Westerdale. First start as a 3-year-old, maybe helped by, as we see, an off track, but he wins by a chart margin of almost 15 lengths. The second place finisher, Racing Raven, looks like a nice little runner for Pletcher and Rapoli. Lebec running third with Kieran and Shadwell. But again, number-wise, Westerdale had an edge coming in. But still, when they win by almost 15 lengths, and it looks like this one potentially headed to the Wood Memorial.
That would be a very, very ambitious spot, but the kind of win that you want to try something like that after. The big caveat here is obviously an off track because one thing that always happens on an off track is there's an exaggeration. Somebody likes it and a lot of people don't. A lot of horses don't. So that will make a win margin completely untrustworthy. Was this horse 14 lengths better than the rest of this field? Probably, absolutely not, actually. But maybe half the margin. Maybe the horse was 7 lengths better than this field. But again, that wet track is going to exaggerate things. But a really nice performance by Western. He took on good company last year behind Mask, and that horse went on to the Mucho Macho Man win down at Gulfstream. Tom Morley seems to have a stable that's on the rise, if you will, in New York, and Westerdale to the Wood Memorial. Very interesting placement for him there. Maybe it'll rain. Maybe they'll pray for rain again. But he's an interesting late bloomer for sure. And again, we talk about those races in New York. You've got the route towards the Belmont Stakes where the Peter Pan isn't. The Peter Pan is only 1.8 miles. So that's the kind of race you might stretch out to around. It's still one turn, and a horse like this that's on development might fit really well in something like the Peter Pan. And maybe not a Kentucky Derby horse, but let's say you run decently in that Wood Memorial, then maybe you come back and the timing for the Peter Pan's really good, and then you see maybe you're a Belmont horse. But there's a ways to go with Westerdale, but he's certainly pointing the right direction.
Yeah, as I say, there were 3 there within the last week or so that I wanted to show that could have been a little bit under the radar. That maybe they'll play into the Triple Crown. They still just barely have time to play in and get the right points, but certainly could be players as we move into the summer. Jeremy, before we go to this afternoon, I know looking at Countdown to the Crown, you had liked Free Drop Billy, so I pulled up the Holy Bull. I'm going to show that again just because I want to get your comments on Audible. I see on your top 10 you have Audible sitting at number 4, and I think he's in a position for a lot of people where he's probably in about that spot, and we all want to see one more, and more importantly, maybe you want to see one because of Pletcher away from Gulfstream, but we may not get that until the Kentucky Derby. But we're watching the Holy Bull here from February 3rd. Audible is the number 4 horse for Todd Pletcher. Free Drop Billy, and again, as you say, likely to scratch because he actually worked out this morning, but Audible runs away here. Give us some of your thoughts on Audible, the New York bred.
I didn't give him that kind of respect going into the race, so really my entire body of admiration for him comes from this performance. And that's dangerous, off of one effort, but that one effort came after the gap from 2 to 3, and you always hear this talk, who's developed, who's moved forward, who's blossoming. So if this race would have come out of the blue, say, after 2 substandard races at the 3-year-old, then you go, maybe this was a one-shot deal. But the fact that this came after the layoff and he ran this big tells you that he could just be a horse who has now finally put it all together. I'll Have Another is the best example of this horse. I'll Have Another had a comeback race in the Bob Lewis in his 3-year-old year. He had been away since Saratoga. I'll Have Another came back and freaked. Just ran a tremendous race. I believe he was somewhere along the lines of 40-1 in the Lewis if you go back and look at that chart that year. And nobody expected it, and it was all like, wow, this was awesome. Can he do it again? And, of course, I'll Have Another kept stringing them together. He didn't lose another race before his premature retirement before the Belmont. So he reminds me a lot of I'll Have Another in that respect and will want to say, prove it to me one more time. Pletcher outside of Florida, like you said, is different than Pletcher within Florida, but he won 2/3 of the Triple Crown last year with 2 different horses, And he was second in the Belmont to end the Triple Crown the year before that with the Tapperus. And so, you look at the last 4 Triple Crown races, Pletcher's had 3 top 2 finishers. And they were all different horses, obviously, over 2 years. But he seems to have found his groove in the Triple Crown of late, Mr. Pletcher. And Audible looks good. I mean, that win looks good. And now, it was kind of obvious when he won that race as strong as he did. They weren't going to come back in the Fountain of Youth and Florida Derby. It was going to be a one-more-shot deal, and you're not going to do it in the Fountain of Youth. You're going to wait for the Florida Derby for the money. The timing is all perfect. He gives him more time, so maybe he doesn't bounce off of that race last time out in the Holy Bull. So it all lines up really nicely for Audible. It appears to me, based on what we're talking about and what you hear and the quotes you see and the interviews you see around the internet and in publications, that there's not a whole lot of horses lining up to take him on in the Florida Derby right now. There's not this strong contingent of Florida Derby type aimed horses. Here, McLaughlin's sending both of his Florida-based horses on the road. Avery Island's going to Louisiana, Entice is going up to the Gotham. Free Drop Billy now is headed up to the Gotham. He's not going to go Gotham and then back Florida Derby. That timing's all wrong. So Free Drop Billy is going to end up in the Bluegrass. I've thought that all year. He won the big race at Keeneland last fall, so he'll come back in the Bluegrass. But the point is if we respect Audible the way we interpret that last race, you can also transfer that to see what the other trainers think of Audible. And to me, I'm not seeing a lot of people raising their hands and saying, let's head to the Florida Derby to take him on right now. We'll see after the Fountain of Youth. We'll know a lot more after the race today. But Audible's got a lot of respect, not only from handicappers, but I think from horsemen, too.
Well, you made the comment, Kieran's looking to ship both of his horses out of town.
Yeah, exactly. And there'll be more of those types, I mean, it's Catholic Boy. I mean, we talked about him. Jonathan Thomas talked originally, Florida Derby might be his next start, but is he going to be in a hurry to go take that horse on, or might he go back to Tampa, or maybe go up to New York for the Wood Memorial with Catholic Boy, since he's already won the Remsen up there, We'll know a lot more about how Audible is doing when the entry box fills for the Florida Derby, because if there are a lot of named players digging instead of zagging, that's going to tell us a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, no question about it. But this afternoon, the Fountain of Youth. We'll take a look at that one, and also that subdivision. I like the 3-year-olds on the turf on the undercard. We'll take a look at a couple of these 3-year-old stakes, but let's start out with the Fountain of Youth. Again, looking at your column, I know you were looking maybe for a little bit of an upset with Free Drop Billy, but that one scratching with the workout this morning. We'll see what the game plan is there. But the Fountain of Youth, the comeback of Good Magic, I went in that direction. And again, a little bit later on, we'll talk with Chad Brown. I recorded an interview yesterday. We'll get his thoughts on Good Magic. Also talk with Mark Henning. And I have Strike Power right underneath. Now, the last race for Strike Power, the win in the Swale, he regressed. He still won by open lengths, regressed Beyer-wise. And Mark Henning kind of attributed that to the big number in the career debut. I have those two on top. I thought Marconi for Pletcher might be a little bit interesting. A, it's Pletcher. B, it's Gulfstream, and we just saw what Audible did down there for Mr. Pletcher. Obviously, Marconi will have to step it up a little bit, but only 3 starts so far, I think moving in the right direction. So if I was going to play around a little bit, that might be the direction I would go. What are your thoughts on the Fountain of Youth?
First, I have absolutely nothing negative to say about Good Magic. His Breeders' Cup Juvenile win was really good. I mean, when a horse from the East goes west, or when a horse from the West goes east and wins in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, they almost always turn out to be a really good horse. You don't see flukish wins that way when a 2-year-old can win out of region. And to win as confidently and dominantly as he did over a horse like Poltoro and Salamini and the others that were in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile, there is nothing to knock on Good Magic at all except the value. You have to take a value determination and say, do I want odds on? He's going to be 4 to 5, 3 to 5, something like that. Do I want that kind of price? And do I accept that as just a winner and single in the pick 4 and that sort of thing like that? Or do I shop around a little bit? The reasons to shop around on Good Magic have nothing to do with him specifically, but there are a couple trends that I thought made it worthy of taking a stab against him if you got the right price. And I thought Free Drop really would go up 5 or 6 to 1 in this race, because I do think Strike Power's undefeated record is going to take a lot of attention. Now with Free Drop Billy scratching that, I don't know if I have a play in this race anymore. The reason I wanted to take a little swing against Good Magic just on value, I think he's the most likely winner of the race, but we've seen these Breeders' Cup Juvenile winners come back at very short prices and lose 3 straight at Gulfstream. You go back to Hanson, to Shanghai Bobby, to Classic Empire last year. These were all very short prices coming off the Breeders' Cup layoff in Gulfstream Stakes. They all got beat at 2 to 5, 3 to 5. So I thought, okay, maybe the door's cracked open a little bit. And when you look at the trends of the Fountain of Youth Stakes, the last 12 years, 11 of the winners were horses who had already raced at the meet and were coming off the top 2 finish at the meet. These are horses that get a race over the track, they're in good form, and they're kind of rising players moving the right direction into the race. I thought second off the layoff, coming off a second-place finish in the Holy Bull, that kind of fit the profile. I've been a fan of Free Drop Billy. I don't think he's the most brilliant horse, but I thought if he catches Good Magic on his B-plus day, and you're going to get 5 or 6 to 1, maybe it's worth the gamble, and that's why I went that direction. Now, if you just want to play that same trend and try to find another horse who fits the profile, maybe that's Storm Runner, the other Dale Romans horse in here, coming off a win at the meet in Allowance Company, and that was a good allowance win. He beat Mississippi, a highly regarded horse for Mark Caffey. So Storm Runner is a horse who maybe fits that same profile, coming off a win at the meet in Allowance Company. 6 of the last 10 years, a winner of the Fountain of Youth was a horse coming out of an allowance race at Gulfstream Park. So these class risers who get good at the right time, maybe it's Storm Runner is the horse who fits the profile. You'd have to get a big price on this horse, though, because I went back and watched this race. His leg action at the end of that mile on the 16th was tired. Mississippi was getting to him. Mississippi was probably the best horse that day and ridden curiously further off the pace than he probably should have been. I have a hard time thinking Storm Runner's going to upset this race, but he's 15 to 1 in the morning line. Everybody's line drops now with the scratch of Free Drop Billy, who was 9 to 2. So, if that makes Storm Runner take 12 to 1 or 10 to 1, I'm not into that gamble. I mean, I think this horse is like a 20 to 1 shot to win this race. If you got 20 to 1 on Storm Runner, maybe take a shot on him to win. Good Magic looks like it's his race to lose. Marconi, the horse you mentioned, I think is the other one that makes a lot of sense. He doesn't fit those profiles as a horse who's been based at Gulfstream, but he has run 3 races in his career, and he's been tremendously green in all 3. He can't get out of his way out of the starting gate. He runs inefficient around the racetrack. But this is a horse who's a half-brother to Mucho Macho Man, who was really good at Gulfstream. Remember that back in the day. And so maybe this horse will appreciate the footing at Gulfstream and like it there. For Pletcher to take him out of the winter scene and bring him down to Florida, I think that's pretty significant, that they think maybe he's moving the right direction at the right time. They paid $2 million for this son of Tapit. Marconi is probably the upset opportunity in here. Again, Storm Runner fits the trends, if you will. But again, I would have to get 20 to 1 on him to want to make a play. It's good Magic's race to lose. And if Marconi finally has, as you like to say, Seth, I know you like the phrase light bulb moment. If he has that light bulb moment, I think he's good enough.
Yeah, he's very interesting, certainly, and we'll see what his odds wind up to be if you want to take a little shot against the two logicals in there. All right, let's go a little bit earlier on the card. Race 6 this afternoon at Gulfstream Park. Again, that subdivision, I like the 3-year-olds on the turf. It's the Palm Beach Grade 3, $100,000, mile and a 16th on the grass. And Jeremy, while we talk, going to pull up the allowance optional claimer from January 13th down at Gulfstream. We're going to watch number 4, Murad, win. I think I'm on the same page as you are. Coming out of this race, I like Murad. I put him on top over Speed Franco. Speed Franco is the 9-5 morning line favorite and certainly logical off the win in the Dania Beach last time. Underneath, I have Hawkish and Therapist, who I think are both interesting players as well. But for me, Murad with really the red hot may be the wrong word, but boy, at the meet, John Velasquez has just been riding so well, and he's going to be on board Murad again this afternoon. So what are your thoughts on the Palm Beach?
Murad's going to get a good trip in here, I think, out of the 2 holes. Speed Franco looks like Lone Speed, and that's the kicker is, are you going to be able to run him down? I just don't see a whole lot of other speed in here, but I thought Murad could get a pretty good first-over type trip, and he's in very light, 114 pounds. I'm hoping Johnny can tack that because he gets a 6-pound break on Speed Franco in this race, and I think that could be a significant weight shift. And so Murad here at a mile and a 16th, we've never seen Speed Franco go this far. So even as Lone Speed, he's got to go a little further, and he's given 6 pounds. I thought that was enough to take a little bit of a shot against Speed Franco. I like Murad. He gets that first over trip, I think, in here. And Pletcher with 3-year-olds on the turf is just, he's strong in a lot of categories, but I think he's particularly strong in this group. And I like Murad's best. I do think Hawkish has a shot in here off a really dazzling debut win. To me, the best 2-turn 3-year-old maiden special weight winner this year has been Hawkish. It was on the turf, not on the main track. But all the other really good maiden special weight wins I've seen this year have been sprint races. I thought Hawkish was the most impressive router. I do not think he's a Triple Crown horse, even though he's Triple Crown nominated. He's by Artie Schiller. Those horses usually can't stand up on the dirt, much less fire over it. So I think Hawkish stays on the green. I think he's a good horse for the Transylvania, Keeneland, a horse for the Crown Royal American Turf at Churchill on Derby, the Belmont Derby Invitational. I mean, I think he's the kind of horse who's going to be a star 3-year-old on the turf. But what kind of running style does he have? He completely blew the start in the career debut and had trouble then. So we don't know if he's a deep closer like he was in that debut or if he's a horse who has a little more tactical speed. If he is a deep closer, he's going to be in trouble trying to catch Speed Franco in here just the way the race shape sets up. So I didn't pick him on top because I don't think the race really sets up for him, but he's another who gets in really light at 114. And maybe he's not a deep closer. Maybe it was just circumstantial what happened in the debut, and it'll actually be more forwardly placed. If Hawkish wins this, I won't be surprised at all. If you are playing a pick 3 or pick 4, I don't think a pick 4 hits in this race, but a pick 3, a multi-race wager that connects in this 6th race, you hate to do it in a 7-horse field, but I think you do have to go 3 deep. I would use Speed Franco, Murad, and Hawkish. I would use all 3 of them in a multi-race wager.
Yeah, I think it's a fun race, and as I say, what is annually kind of a fun subdivision of 3-year-olds on turf. Jeremy, got to go, but as always, we appreciate the visit, the thoughts, and again, recommend people swing by horseplayernow.com every Friday afternoon to pick up the latest edition of Countdown to the Crown. Jeremy, we'll talk again.
Thanks, and I want to welcome everybody back to night school next Tuesday, 8:30 Eastern. The second Tuesday of every month will be night school this year, so our debut comes up next Tuesday.
I meant to ask that. What's the topic this week?
It's going to be a different format this year. We're going to do a round table every week where we solicit fan questions, or every month, and then our round table, which includes myself, Brian Spencer, Bob Newmeyer, Caton Bradar, Steve Fick, and a rotating guest here and there as we go around. We're going to take roundtable questions and try to get into the topics that fans want to talk about each and every session. So the second Tuesday of every month, 8:30 Eastern, is the premier time for our Nights at the Round Table, as we're saying this year. We'll have a roundtable discussion, and hopefully we can have you on sometime during the year.
I like that. I'll wear my suit of armor.
You may need it with that group.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. Jeremy, again, appreciate the visit, and as I say, we'll talk again.
Take care, everybody.
Jeremy Plonk. All right, we'll take a break. Coming up, a couple of taped interviews. Chad Brown and Mark Henning. Stay tuned.
Florida, the action's hot. This winter, be part of the championship meet at Gulfstream Park, where the fields are deep and the payouts are big. With some of the most competitive turf racing in America, Gulfstream Park is your winter destination for the finest in championship thoroughbred horse racing. And if you're looking for the top jockeys and best trainers, you'll find them all at Gulfstream Park. So play it today. Gulfstream Park. Champions start here.
What if there was a way to become a better horse player, to have a better knowledge of the game, to be more successful? What if there were a way to take what you've learned, what you know, and make better decisions, better choices, to know how to connect the dots? In horse racing, knowledge is a powerful tool, but not the only tool. Race results and replays, past performances and live streaming, wagering from all your digital devices. These too are important tools, and you'll find them all right here at Capital OTB. Capital OTB. Become a better horse player.
In a recent study of some of the top online wagering sites, Capital OTB won big in total player rewards, far surpassing some of the best-known wagering sites in America. While other rewards programs simply offer you points redeemable for gift cards, Capital OTB's rebates are paid to you in actual cash. Plus, Capital OTB gives you full and immediate access to your money. So if all you're getting now are points and gift cards, join Capital OTB Player Rewards today and get cash back. Visit CapitalOTBBet.com and sign up today.
This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. As you can see over on the right-hand side of your screen, they've already done the pregame show. It's already started the pregame show for Gulfstream. Don't forget, Gulfstream's post time today. Race number 1, 11:30. It's a 14-race card, so 11:30 post for Gulfstream this morning. The highlight of the Gulfstream card, though, is race number 14. It will go off at about 10 after 6 this evening, and it's the Fountain of Youth, the 3-year-old seasonal debut for Good Magic. Last year's champion 2-year-old won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile for local native Chad Brown. We caught up with Chad yesterday, talked a little Good Magic. He's got another, 3 runners in the undercard stakes, and we also got a little update on Economic Model, who won the Hell's Hope last weekend. So interview with Chad Brown and catching up with some of his stakes action this afternoon. That is coming up now. Happy to be joined by Chad Brown. Looking forward to a big day on Saturday. Lots of stakes action down there, and Chad has a few runners that we'll talk about. Good afternoon, Chad.
Hi, good afternoon.
Happy to talk to you a little bit on a big day, and obviously the big horse, Good Magic, making the seasonal debut in the Fountain of Youth. So let's start there. And Chad, last Sunday on our program, we talked a little 3-year-old in the Derby Trail, and we were talking about how things had kind of juggled up down in Louisiana and at Oaklawn, but horses like Good Magic, Bolt d'Oro, and McKinsey, who we've seen already this year, if they can kind of validate what we've seen, the cream will rise to the top a little bit, and that's going to be what we're going to get a chance to see in the Fountain of Youth with Good Magic on Saturday. And while we talk, I wanted to pull up, because online a couple of weeks ago, Good Magic had a workout in company with Economic Model. And Good Magic is going to be on the inside here, Economic Model on the outside. And of course, Economic Model goes on to win the Hell's Hope. Talk a little bit about this workout, and what do you try to accomplish with a workout like this, an older, more experienced horse against a lightly raced 3-year-old?
Well, I thought they'd be a good match, and they worked a couple weeks together like that, and they both got a lot out of it. And, so far the first half of its work, because Economic Model, like you said, ran a really good race, and hopefully Good Magic can do the same thing.
And how do you decide when to kind of double up? Because I know subsequently Good Magic had to work by himself over at Palmetto's last week. How do you decide when to kind of double up like this in the workouts?
I just week to week, I observe how they work, how they come out of it, and what I think they need the following week, more or less work. And of course, each horse is guided into a different date and a different type of race. And, it's my job to try to bring him into each race the best way possible for that specific horse. And for about a 2-week period, I thought these two horses were at a point in time in their training where they could benefit from each other. And when they've accomplished what I've asked them to, then I would separate them. And Good Magic is the last piece of work was easier, and I feel like I have him where I need to be now. And I just want to bring him into the race healthy at this point.
Yeah, we just saw him come down the stretch, and Good Magic again, just getting the edge over Economic Model, who, as I say, came back last week to win the House Home. So that has to be a little confidence boost as well. What are your expectations for Saturday afternoon in the seasonal debut?
Well, I expect him to run well. I think he's well prepared. The horse has cooperated every step of the way. He's asked everything. He's done everything we've asked of him. And, we're just excited to get his 3-year-old campaign kicked off. He's an exciting horse. It seems to have gotten a little stronger over the winter.
I was going to ask that. A lot of times you get some time off, and from 2 to 3, they add some maturity and some confidence. Have you seen that in the horse?
I have. This horse is really developed physically. I'd say mentally as well, but he's always has a good head on him. I mean, as a 2-year-old, he was always a very straightforward, intelligent horse that knew exactly what to do when we want him to do it. And that hasn't changed. So he's just, a very, very nice horse. We're lucky to have him.
Is it a play-by-ear thing, or do you have a schedule? I'm assuming one more race before the Kentucky Derby. Do you have something picked out, or are you playing it by ear?
I'm going to play it by ear. Probably lean towards the Bluegrass at this point, from a timing standpoint and logistically getting him up to Kentucky. But nothing's set in stone. We'll see how he runs here and see how he comes out of it. Races like the Wood and the Florida Derby are in consideration as well.
Before we move on, just talk a little bit about the owner of Good Magic, E5 Racing. There was a nice Q&A online with the E5 people within the past couple of days. Talk about them who've gotten in it in kind of a big way.
Yeah, Bob Edwards and his family, wonderful clients of mine and friends, and they've had tremendous success so far. And he's built himself a really nice team of people around him to buy the horses. Like Mike Ryan and the broke it over at Stone Street by Ian Brennan, and then I train the majority of them, and they're just really, really good people. And as our people at Stone Street, Barbara Banky and her team, they own the other half, and they're just as much responsible for the success of this horse. I'm lucky to have them in my stable.
And again, we wish you good luck with Good Magic on Saturday afternoon. But it's a nice stakes card down at Gulfstream, and I wanted to touch on and get an idea of some of the other runners as well. And Here Comes the Bride earlier on the card on Saturday. You have Bertata. This is a horse, you look at the past performances, and just a horse that seems better than the record. Just broke through and got the maiden win last time in the 5th career start, but has really been knocking at the door throughout the whole career. Another one of those I want to ask, though, the win came on February 4th. Is this horse one of those that gained some of that maturity moving from a 2-year-old to a 3-year-old?
Yeah, I think so. This horse, we've always thought a lot of her, and she's run some really good races and been unlucky not to break her maiden sooner. I was confident enough to run her in a stake race at Aqueduct as a maiden, where she ran second. That's how much I've always liked her. Nice to see her finally break through and break her maiden in good fashion, and she learned a lot from that. She's training really well, and could jump right into a graded stake off a maiden win, but she has plenty of experience, and she's training quite well right now.
Yeah, and we're watching the stretch run of the maiden breaker on February 4th. Bertata is the number 12 horse, wins as the 2-1 favorite. And as I say, that was off a little bit of a December to February layoff, and it does seem like she came back with some added maturity. As a numbers guy, I think she probably fits with most of the bunch. There are a couple in here with a little bit with buyers that are maybe a few points higher, but do you expect that there's still some upside potential there?
I do. I think there's plenty of upside with this horse, and hopefully she has a really good year.
Yeah, and again, that is in the Here Comes the Bride a little earlier on the card. Also on the card, the Gulfstream Park Sprint. Favorable Outcome will be in that event. We're going to go back, and I wanted to go back a ways with Favorable Outcome. We're going back to the Swale last year. So it's about a year ago, February 4th of 2017. Favorable Outcome will be the number 4. This is a newly turned 4-year-old, last seen running third in the Malibu. But I wanted to go back to this race, the Swale of last year, because one start on the Gulfstream Park surface and one win in the Swale. Is there a little bit of a horse for a course angle, perhaps, for a Favorable Outcome on Saturday?
I hope so. He really ran a great race in the Swale last year. Unfortunately, he was subsequently injured not too far after that race, and we missed most of the year with him. He's come back good. He's healthy now, training really well, and if he can regain that form from last year when he won the Swale, he should be pretty tough in here.
And I'm guessing by looking at the past performance from last year, the game plan will be to stay sprinting this year?
Yeah, just keep him around one turn on the dirt, and hopefully he stays healthy, and if he does, he should have a really good year.
All right, and let's move on because I want to get some thoughts. Earlier, I had our colleague Brian Nadeau on, and we were doing some handicapping pre-taping for Saturday morning, looking at the Gulfstream Park card. And we looked at the McNear-Armida, and we both said Bernay is a horse that may be sneaky good. Bernay, we're going to look at the Gulfstream Park race from January 24th. Bernay is going to be the number 9 horse, finishing second in here behind number 8, Arch Daddy. That was a race off a more than 2-year layoff. Now, again, buyer figures, maybe the numbers are a little light, but we just had the feeling this horse may be a little bit sneaky and maybe is set to jump forward and improve a little bit. We're watching a nice late run to get the second place finish in that return to the races last time. Give us your thoughts on Bernay, and are you expecting a little move forward off of that return effort?
Yeah, I am. Such a long layoff, 2 years, and I thought he ran really well. Not much pace to run at, going very far off that kind of a layoff. But it was hard to find any type of race he qualified for to get him back to the races. And he came out of it good, and he's always trained like he was going to be very competitive in graded stakes over here in this country. And now that he's healthy, hopefully he can get to a solid campaign in this class level.
And as I say, we thought that might be a sneaky one at a little bit of a price, so we'll keep our eyes on that. And finally, Chad, before we let you go, I wanted to go back to last week because we talked about Economic Model. We'll watch the stretch run to the House Hope. Economic Model will be the number 2 horse. Gets it done at 5-1 over the returning Irish War Cry in here. Were you expecting this kind of effort?
Yeah, we're hoping. I mean, he'd been training really well with Good Magic, like you said earlier. And he's a horse that unfortunately lost his way last year a bit with some chronic foot injuries. It just took a lot of time and patience to get through those. And now that he's healthy again and in really good form, uninterrupted training schedule, he got to show what he can do when he's right. And hopefully he stays healthy and has a really good year.
You have anything penned in next for Economic Model?
Not sure yet. The Carter, maybe
nice.
We might cut him back just a touch. In the Carter at Aqueduct, most likely. Small chance he could go to Dubai and run in the Godolphin Mile over there, too. So we're in the process of hashing this out this week.
Yeah, very good. Chad, as always, appreciate you taking the time and the visit. We certainly wish you good luck on the seasonal return of Good Magic.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Appreciate it. Chad Brown, again, Good Magic, making the comeback as a 3-year-old after winning the Eclipse Award and the Breeders' Cup last year as a 2-year-old, highlighting a nice stakes day for Chad Brown at Gulfstream on Saturday. Again, thanks to Chad for his time yesterday on that interview. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Mark Henning taped an interview with him as well. Stay tuned.
This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Sign up today for Capital OTB's handicapping series and plan your trip to Las Vegas.
In a recent study of some of the top online wagering sites, Capital OTB won big in total player rewards, far surpassing some of the best-known wagering sites in America. While other rewards programs simply offer you points redeemable for gift cards, Capital OTB's rebates are paid to you in actual cash. Plus, Capital OTB gives you full and immediate access to your money. So if all you're getting now are points and gift cards, join Capital OTB Player Rewards today and get cash back. Visit CapitalOTBBet.com and sign up today.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Come on.
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Whoops. My bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. Again, thanks to Chad Brown for his time yesterday in a taped interview. We also caught up yesterday with Mark Henning. Chad has good magic. He makes the Fountain of Youth interesting on Saturday afternoon, but not the lone horse to do so, because Strike Power comes into the Fountain of Youth undefeated, having won the Swale last time and only his second career start for trainer Mark Henning. A little bit earlier on the card, he has Cash in the Devona Dale coming off an impressive debut victory. And in New York in the Busher, he has My Miss Lily. We talked about all of those with Mark Henning right now. All right, happy to be joined by Mark Henning, who has a big Saturday lined up. We're going to talk about some of his horses in the stakes races on Saturday afternoon. As always, Mark, appreciate the visit.
Yeah, nice to join you all on a horrible day in Saratoga and a nice day here in South Florida.
Yeah, we were talking before we went on the air. I had to live a little vicariously and find out. I knew the weather would be much better down there than it is up here in upstate New York, but we'll live vicariously watching the races Saturday afternoon as well down at Gulfstream Park. And let's start there, Mark. Want to talk a little bit about Strike Power. You're going to stretch him out in the Fountain of Youth. Had the fabulous debut effort back in December with the 102 Beyer figure. While we talk, we're going to watch the Swale. That was the follow-up on February 3rd. Strike Power is going to be the number 6 here. And Mark, talk a little bit about the effort, because we'll see he's a little bit maybe green in the stretch, and the Beyer regressed a little bit, albeit he wins by daylight. But I know you were kind of thinking that maybe the move backward number-wise was kind of a function of just a big debut effort, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we went back. I was looking after his debut. You know, we got the numbers back, and if you go back and look at some of the key horses through the years, like that have run triple-digit Beyers, which there hasn't been that many in their debut. You know, Curlin, some of the better horses, almost all. Well, they all regressed to a certain point. And we kept that in mind. That's why we tried to space his race. You know, there was an allowance race that should have come back in 3 weeks, so we felt like that it was more important that we give him the time than worry about the company at that point. And, you know, the Swale just gave us an opportunity. The timing was better. We might have preferred a couple more weeks, but the timing was better. And with the, you know, we felt like he was capable of handling it. You know, at least being competitive in there, and it turned out everything was fine.
Yeah, and we watched him, picked it up around the turn and through the stretch, and nobody was really making any ground. So maybe he could have gone faster. He certainly didn't have to, though. Nice performance in the Swale. And again, that was only start number 2. But the debut was at 5.5. The Swale was at 7. On Saturday afternoon, you stretch out to 1 mile and a 16th, 2 turns. I know you had a workout with him recently, and I believe it was with Carlino. I saw some video of that online, and it looked like the game plan was to put him a few lengths behind Carlino, and then he made up some nice ground. Game plan there just to maybe teach him to settle a little bit for his first 2 turn try?
Yeah, I mean, and I had done that in the work before with a filly named Cash that's running in the Devon Dale with him. You know, I just wanted to kind of, I felt confident that he would relax, but, you know, a little reassurance doesn't hurt, and the experience. And I thought the other day when he worked against Starlino that he really showed a willingness to do whatever the rider calls on him to do. I mean, I think he's just a pretty quick horse, so he's liable to be, you know, on or right on the pace no matter what. But, you know, if somebody wants to, you know, in this case, looks like the speed's outside of us. If somebody wants to really gun into the first turn, they're probably going to have to run pretty quick, but they're, you know, I think he'd be content to sit off of them for a while.
And I heard an interview with you and also trying 2 turns for the first time. It sounds like you've thrown some gallops into him too, just to get him more set for the stretch out.
Yeah, I mean, we had not really galloped him much over 1 1/8 going into those first couple, and now he's had some good 1.5 mile gallops. He seems to be relishing the training. I mean, he hasn't backed up at all. He stayed in the feed tub. He's doing excellent.
So what are you expecting Saturday afternoon? Or is it always a guessing game in these situations? You know, you're hoping for the best. You've got a talented horse, but 2 turns is always something, a little bit of an experiment. But what are you expecting?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of anxious to see it like the rest of y'all. I probably have more confidence watching him on a daily basis and knowing the horse and knowing how relaxed of an individual he is. But, you know, like any horse, you know, until they do it, you've got to see it. And one that has his brilliant speed, you know, you definitely want to see it. So, I mean, we're very optimistic, but we're also realistic. You know, in the event that it doesn't pan out, you know, we're not going to hang our heads. We're going to regroup and point to a nice campaign. There's some awful nice races for shorter distances if need be.
Yeah, I said to you when we talked a few weeks ago, Woody Stevens, King's Bishop, they're pretty good prizes in and of themselves if you wind up that way. And I'm guessing, I'll ask, but I'm guessing maybe as this is the first time on 2 turns, you don't have anything mapped out, but it is, you have a nice 3-year-old potentially on the Derby trail. Is there a game plan if he runs well tomorrow as far as what the next race might be?
Well, I think we're taking it 1 race at a time. You know, and you've got to obviously see how they come out of this race. So, you know, it's all nice to map these things out and to type them up and say this is where we're going to run each month or each 6 weeks or whatever. But as we know, things never go the way that you map them out.
Yeah, as a handicapper, I absolutely know that, and it works on the other side of the game as well. We wish you a lot of luck Saturday afternoon with Strike Power in the Fountain of Youth. Let's move on to the Devon Dale. You talked about Cash a little bit earlier. Cash was very good looking in her career debut. We're going to actually take a look at that career debut on January 27th. Cash is going to be the number 2 horse. Again, this is the career debut. Word was out as she was the 6-5 favorite. She wins by a chart margin of just under 3 lengths here under Javier Castellano. How's she been working since this race in preparation for the Devon Dale?
She's been doing real well. I mean, you know, this is an ambitious placement with her, but, you know, we've been trying to get allowance races to go. There really isn't another option for her. You know, it was a matter of, you know, try this spot or go on the road with her. And, you know, she's kind of a little bit quirky, a little bit of a nervous sort in the gait. She's a little funny. So we felt like, you know, even though we're obviously giving up a lot on experience, you know, just to keep her at home, let her walk out of her own stall is probably going to put her in more of a comfort zone if we're going to have to try one of these stakes. You know, obviously it's such a big jump up in class that, you know, she doesn't have to win for us to be content and move forward. You know, as long as she gives a good account of herself. She was a little green in that first race, but she, you know, I think that was mainly because she kind of found herself out there with a little bored the last 1/8 of a mile. I don't think that'll happen to her this race.
Yeah, we saw her maybe duck out just a little bit about the 8th pole, and Castellano got going on her again. She straightened out and won nicely. Again, a good-looking debut. But, as you say, a little bit green, but do they tend to add some maturity as they get a start under their belts and kind of figure it out, what they're going over there for on race day?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most of them do. The good ones do. Some of them go the wrong way, but she's done well. And she's a filly that's just always impressed us. I mean, we've always been very high on her and thought a lot of her. I think she's definitely a great estate caliber filly. It's just a matter of whether this is a little early for that, and whether she's up to handling the task.
Yeah, she was very impressive in that career debut. That was at 7. Saturday's Devona Dale's a 1-turn mile. Not much of a stretch out, but how do you think she's going to handle the extra furlong?
I think that the distance is going to help her. I mean, she's a filly that just when you breeze her, her gallop outs are so impressive. I mean, just never seems to tire and just keeps finding more gears. I mean, she never worked that fast. It was just more the way she finished her works and want to keep going after the wire that made you really feel like she had some quality.
And certainly the buzz was out about those works. As I said, she went off at 6-5.
Yeah, she was actually in at Belmont in, I guess it was June or something like that, and she was 6-5 that day, maybe even a shorter price. She warmed up. She galloped off great in the post parade, and by the time she got over the backside, she was tight. And Javier was on her, did the right thing, and asked to have her scratched. So, we feel fortunate that he did that day because she ended up having a subsequent issue after that. So, I think for her mentally, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to her was not running that early and not having much of a 2-year-old here. Just got to train some, got a little break, and got to come back, and I think it's made her stronger and more sensible.
Very good. And also went to your Twitter feed, Mark, and I guess it was about a week ago, posted some video of Cash and Strike Power, just kind of taking a stroll in the morning through the Gulfstream paddock. Both lightly raced, Cash with only 1 start, Strike Power with a couple of starts. Just trying to get them some education when you do that, do a little paddock schooling like that?
Absolutely, yeah. We did that again this week, and we've had Cash at the gate a couple of times. So just trying to keep them reminded of how to behave properly, and hope it goes that well.
All right, before we let you go, want to take a look at tomorrow's Busher, or Saturday afternoon's Busher at Aqueduct. A couple of $100,000 on the line. It's a 1-turn mile. And Miss Lily has been with you down in Florida. Now, she broke the maiden, and we're going to take a look at the maiden breaker from December 23rd at Aqueduct. This was the career debut. My Miss Lily is going to be the number 4 horse. Subsequently, she went down to Florida, and as I say, was working with you down at Gulfstream. Finished 3rd in the Forward Gal behind Take Charge Paula. I'm assuming the game plan to come back to New York with her was just to keep the 2 nice fillies apart.
It was, and also, if she had run at Aqueduct, she had run in the slop. A lot of times, you get mud there in the spring in New York, or the early spring, winter time. So, we just felt like rather than trying to send Chad, it made more sense to send my Miss Lily, who's already shipped over to Aqueduct, and run from our Belmont barn in the past. So it would be new to her. That filly's really trained well since her effort in the Forward Gal. I mean, I think, once again, we kind of threw her to the wolves, running in a graded stake with her off the maiden win. But again, the allowance races weren't filling, so it was kind of the hand we were dealt.
Yeah, and it was a nice performance, a nice 3rd place performance. And as you say, with the experience over the track at Aqueduct and a sloppy track, and given the weather, it looks like that there will certainly be some moisture in the track on Saturday afternoon at Aqueduct. So that probably is going to be beneficial.
They're getting a lot of rain there today, and it's not going to dry out real quick. So I'm anticipating having some moisture. I mean, she's a nice long-legged tappet, so it's going to appreciate more distance. And the way she's trained since that last race makes me think that she'll move forward from the last. Whether that's good enough will remain to be seen.
Sounds good, Mark. Again, nice Saturday lined up with a couple 3-year-old fillies and a 3-year-old colt that could be lining up Derby and Oaks in the future, depending on what happens Saturday. But they certainly look like they're in good spots. So, Mark, wish you a lot of luck. Again, we appreciate the visit.
Okay, thanks a lot. You all stay warm up there.
Appreciate it. Mark Henning, again, nice Saturday lined up. Couple at Gulfstream, one at Aqueduct. So we wish them a good afternoon. Thanks to Mark Henning for taking his time. Nice show today. Mark Henning updating on Strike Power Cash, My Miss Lily. Chad Brown talks some good magic and his undercard stake performers. A little update on Hal's Hope winner from last week, economic model as well. And we kick things off. A visit from Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com, and Countdown to the Crown. Again, swing by horseplayernow.com to pick up the Countdown to the Crown package every Friday afternoon to keep up to date on the 3-year-old scene and the move into the Derby and Triple Crown trail. Also, Jeremy alerted us, Tuesday night kicks off the 2018 sessions of Night School. So go by horseplayernow.com to keep up with that as well. I want to thank our friends at Gulfstream for their sponsorship. Gulfstream Park. Champions start here, and don't forget Gulfstream today. The kickoff is a little under a half an hour with the 14 race card. They will start things off race number 1 this morning at about 11:30 down at Gulfstream. Keep that in mind. Columbia Turnpike Branch has a Fan Appreciation Day. That will kick off at noon this afternoon. Swing on by if you're a patron between noon and 5. The first 50 folks through the door get a bet voucher and a giveaway item, but beyond that, there are past performances available for folks, a contest, food and beverage, always a lot of fun, and as I say, it gives us our chance to say thank you to you if you are a patron at the Columbia Turnpike Branch today, Fan Appreciation Day, noon to 5. Bet 50, get 50 continues through the month of March. Sign up for a new account, bet $50 into your Capital Bets account, and Capital OTB will put $50 into your account. So keep that in mind as well. All right, going to wrap things up for Racing Across America. I'll be back in an hour and a half or so to kick things off for OTB Live for a Saturday afternoon. We're back in tomorrow morning with more Racing Across America at 10 a.m. In the meantime, enjoy the action. We'll see you in about an hour.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.